thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us.
We lost our dear leader.
Sorry, guys. My bad. I had to hit a button, bro. I had to hit a button. Good morning, and thank you all for tuning in. Oh, yes. Good morning. That's right. It is Friday, March 29th, and today is National Pita Day. It's also National
what?
Pita Day. Not pita like pita bread, bro. Not like PETA like the animals. Okay.
I thought you said P. Diddy.
I bet. Oh, I mean, that's a good one, too. It's also National Nevada Day. National Lemon Chiffon Dake Cake Day. Excuse me. National Lemon Chiffon Dake Day. National Mom and Pop Business Owners Day. So shout out to all those mom and pop business owners out there. Yes, and I got two more good ones for you, Rico, because it's also National Vietnam War Veterans Day today. So shout out to all the veterans out there. Yes, and it's Good Friday, because today's Friday is better than all the rest of them, you guys.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It is.
Thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look down below on your screen to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. But kicking it off first, that's right, we have the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte, who got his green screen kicking and actually has a black hat on today instead of his old trusty orange hat.
I thought you didn't see color, Jason.
I do. I see all the colors, bro. I'm not colorblind. I'm not one of those. I'm not. I have
one of
genes.
those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
shout out to all the colorblind people out there.
Yeah. Shout out to all the colorblind people. I know a lot of them we have here because I could tell by the poll yesterday that they all thought your hat was red. But nonetheless, it is the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte.
Ah, yeah, Jason.
Yes.
Thank you, and happy Good Friday to everybody out there. It's gonna be a great Friday. But apparently it is not a great Friday for Virginians, my home state. But as the late, great Maya Angelou said it best, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I'm sure all my friends back home, my family back home in Virginia too, are saying just that about Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin this week after he decided yesterday to veto legislation for cannabis, officially killing a 3-year Republican-led stall to open the market. Politico's Mona Zhang reported that the Commonwealth state has allowed adults over 21 to possess and cultivate cannabis at home since the legislature was passed and legalization legislation in 2021. But the law required another vote to be implemented to commercial sales, which failed after Republicans won the House of Delegates later that year. Youngkin said in his veto statement that the proposed legislation of retail marijuana in the Commonwealth endangers Virginia's health and safety. also does not eliminate illegal black market sale of cannabis nor guarantee product safety. Pro-legalization advocates were hopeful that a marijuana legislation bill would make it to the finish line this year after Democrats won back the House of Delegates last November. While Youngkin has historically opposed the efforts to liberalize marijuana laws, as we reported earlier this week here at High at 9 News, the marijuana sales bill was poised to be used as a bargaining chip by Democrats in budget negotiations over one of Youngkin's top priorities, a $2 billion stadium deal to bring the Washington Capitals and the Wizards to Northern Virginia. The stadium deal ultimately fell through as well. Zhang noted that earlier this month, the final budget enacted by Virginia's legislature did not contain funding for the Glen Dome, as Democratic Senate Finance and Appropriations Chair Senator Louise Lucas dubbed the project. Pro-legalization advocates still believed they had a chance to negotiate with the governor ahead of the legislature's April 17th veto session. But on Wednesday, the city of Alexandria said a proposal to develop the arena there will not move forward. Democratic delegate Paul Kryzak led the lead sponsor of the weed marketplace bill, blasted the governor's veto, saying that Governor Youngkin's failure to act allows an already thriving illegal cannabis market to persist, fueling criminal activity and endangering our communities. This veto squandered a vital opportunity to safeguard Virginians and will only exacerbate the proliferation of illicit products, posing greater risks to our schools and public safety. All right, y'all. This one's a little personal, because I'm from Virginia. I've been trying to be there for my people back there, but it's also why I don't live in Virginia anymore. Backwards shit like this, petty shit like this. There's the same Glenn Youngkin that was voted in, claiming to be a pro-business governor, but the only deals that he looked to move forward on the first 3 years in office stood to benefit himself, his close friends, and colleagues. The same dude that said he'd work tirelessly to protect Virginia's children, but chose to focus on petty bullshit like changing the nation's first Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office's name to Diversity, Opportunity, and Inclusion because woke words like equity to him are toxic and are poisoning the minds of Virginia's youth. The same bum that had 2 years of his homies running the show, controlling both chambers, and nothing came of it but chaos and disarray. So much that it led to landslide midterm losses and a complete loss of power back to the Democrats. And he was even offered by the Democrats this week that are now in charge an extra $1 million to his own general fund to get this Weed for the People bill passed. He could have used that money to make things better in his own way. While it was sitting on his desk awaiting his signature, he bragged about not planning on signing it to the press. Yeah. At an event in Chesapeake last week, he said that he had somebody ask him the other day if he was going to sign the legislation. And his response, "I've been talking about this for 60 days, and I said, anyone who thinks I'm going to sign that legislation must be smoking something." He thinks this shit's a game. He thinks it's a joke. Glenn Youngkin has shown the people of Virginia who he is. He's a loser. And I know that there is a vice president spot still up for grabs under his personal petty loser hero's presidential campaign. Maybe that's a better fit. Glenn Youngkin's personal choice to prioritize his own petty beefs over the will of the people is not what Virginia needs. I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High at 9 News. What do you guys think about this?
I mean, did any of us really expect him to sign this bill in the first place? I didn't. I did think I did think that the stadium deal was a good pressure point that the Democrats used to get him to move towards this bill, but it seems as though those efforts were unsuccessful.
Yeah, it's sad. The people are losing, and you put this guy in office thinking that he's pro business, and then he had 2 years. His first 2 years, he didn't get shit done, and he lost both chambers of the House. and the people that have heard, women in the state, because he wanted to be anti women's rights. All the cannabis folks that would have been behind him, like he didn't get that done either. And he's not doing shit, man. He's just trying to push forward projects that are the vanity projects for himself. And the people of Virginia are just losing because
cannabis continues to be bought and sold. Benefits. There's no return to the communities. There's no tax dollars. It's a true waste, and that's all I can even say because you said it all so well, Rico.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, there's a certain group of people in Virginia who are winning, and those are the trappers.
Yep.
Yes, they are.
Yep.
They continue to win.
Exactly.
Continue to win.
Where is it? Hold on a second. Let me pull this back up. Brian Dambrowski, he said at the beginning of the show, he said, now is the time for the Virginia hemp side to file for an injunction and get their products back on the shelves. They just need to file the right injunction or right jurisdictions this time, he says. What do you think about that, Rico? Hemp.
Maybe. I hope
is
so.
For everyone.
Yes. Delta 8 is going to be winning.
Delta 8. That's what the trap survives.
You guys will hear in my story, which is relating to something going on in Minnesota, where they're trying to merge the markets. Right. It seems like they recognize that the hemp-derived materials are serving a certain need in the cannabis market. And I think these regulators need to, take off their rose-colored glasses and see the landscape as it exists today, which is that people want to get high, and they want to use that as an alternative to alcohol and other things. So, anything they can do to sort of level the playing field, I think, between these two sides of the industry, because let's face it, all that unregulated stuff is just going to keep going unless they figure, how to sensibly regulate it.
Yeah, and in in the we can talk about bipartisanship. This isn't. I don't mean to like rag on Republicans or anything, because the Republicans in Ohio, they compromised. You have the will of the people that are pushing something forward. You find a way to get stuff done. And this is not the way. This is not it.
What's even worse, Rico, Virginia, the Commonwealth is I think the only one I can think of all the states that did adopt the failed federal policy of Schedule 1 for cannabis. And so there's even, the only folks that seem to be winning are the enforcement, like law enforcement, that were still busting people and killing people, and prohibition is still alive and well in the Commonwealth of Virginia, clearly.
Any thoughts on this, Dr. T?
Yeah, when 70% of the people support medical cannabis and 90% want to decriminalize it, and your role as a legislator is to listen to the people, and what you do instead is use cannabis as a political football. It's just a shame, I just imagine all the people that are getting hurt by it. But we've come a long way. On the flip side, we've come a long way. It's not that far to DC, keep it going until we get these guys to stop playing with our livelihood.
There is a story that came out yesterday that we didn't cover that involved this when the Governor Youngkin announced that he did not plan on signing this bill, and to which he stated, if you guys thought I was going to sign this, you guys are definitely smoking something. And that's
part of my story.
I appreciated that. I thought that was I never expected him to sign it in the first place, but you know what I mean? I'm not. I do find his comments amusing.
But it's not funny. It's not funny though. Yeah, it's not funny because people are hurting. People are losing access to medicine, and this bill was fucking passed 3 years ago, man.
You know who's going to eat Virginia's lunch?
They're turning opiates instead,
Maryland.
Which is killing people. And what about our veterans? I mean, this is offensive on so many levels. I'm trying not to get all hot.
Oh, she's getting all hot and bothered.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love it. I love it.
I tried my best to taper down my emotion with this one, but this is stupid. Like at this point, like it would be a win for him, even if he had this bill and changed it all up to be more favorable for the Republicans. Push something forward. You've had 3 years. You had your entire government on your side, and you guys failed to push something forward.
I agree that I agree. I think they should have had a regulated market. They could have had something regulated, more regulated from a Republican standpoint, I would say, than from some other Democratic frameworks. But
right,
it's a failure to negotiate.
Yeah, I think he missed a golden opportunity to really have something set up the way that he would want it, with the inevitability that is ultimately is going to get set up. And so I don't know why this mindset of if I don't do it, then it'll never get set up really comes into play, because ultimately the will of the people will survive and will push through.
And he'll be out of office. So he's going to be out of office soon. And somebody else will get a crack at it.
Watch him join an MSO like Boehner. Get out of office, and then he'll join an MSO and be some highly paid goon.
That's funny. That's funny. But on that, we're going to roll to a commercial. We're going to be right back.
Oh man, that was weird. Hey, you America. Do I look like Sean Connery? Good morning, America. Saman Razani coming to you live from sunny Los Angeles, California, with the one and only highest host, Mr. Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast? You can find it on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. No excuses in 2024. If you haven't checked us out, check it out now. And also, check out what the Prophet's doing in 2024.
He is the cannabis industry's very own Kaiser Sose, known for smoking the best weed in the world and being the highest Republican in every room that he walks into. Here to break us off with a little Friday love. Y'all know who it is. Jason.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, Rico. Hope everyone's having a great day today. Happy Friday, you guys.
Happy Friday.
Yes. Interesting story, you guys. Missouri. That's right. We were talking about how great a market it is yesterday, Rico. You remember that?
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Missouri revokes 9 out of 48 marijuana social equity licenses, Rico.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Spoke too soon.
Yeah. I see how I set you up for that. That was great. 9 of the 48 marijuana social equity licenses issued by Missouri regulators last fall have been revoked because these applicants were deemed ineligible, they say. 8 of the revoked licenses were issued to out-of-state operators, and 1 was a wholesale facility. Nonprofit news outlet Missouri Independent reported, citing the state's Division of Cannabis Regulation. And they say regulators warned last December that 11 winners of social equity licenses might have been ineligible. One of the companies that lost its license on Wednesday, Frankenstein Enemy in Columbia, worked with Michigan-based Cannazone MLS in obtaining its permit. Cannazone allegedly submitted 104 applications and won 2 dispensary licenses in Missouri's lottery for social equity permits. Frankenstein Enemy, in a statement to the Independent, called the revocation drastic and unjustified. And in quotes, "We have not been provided with specific reasons or justifications for the revocation, leaving us in a position where we must take appropriate action," Frankenstein Enemy said. In another quote, "The lack of transparency and the apparent predisposition to revoke our license prior to affording us a fair hearing not only impacts our license, but also sets a concerning precedent for the micro-businesses program and its intended beneficiaries as a whole." Arizona-based cannabis business advisors who who also connected to 400 dispensary applications in Missouri, according to The Independent. 6 of those applications were granted licenses, but saw them revoked on Wednesday. The Division of Cannabis Regulation said it found that applicants or the purported majority owners connected to the applications weren't familiar with the agreements or operations tied to the license, in quotes. While owning and operating a license may include contracting for management services or consulting services, the lack of knowledge, control, agency, or decision-making demonstrated by the individuals whose information was used to meet eligibility does not meet even the most generous interpretation of owning and operating a business, Amy Moore, director of the Division of Cannabis Regulation, said in a statement. Man, they're saying that these people don't have enough smarts to have a business in Missouri, apparently. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. This is Jason Beck for the High at 9 News Hour. What do y'all have to say?
I want to hear Dale.
You got to unmute yourself, Dale. You got to unmute yourself. Mm-hmm. She shakes her head and mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have issues
Mm-hmm.
with. Look, I work within multiple social equity programs. I work with governments, and it is a constant battle to try to figure out who is truly deserving. And this isn't a handout. It's just an opportunity to work your ass off. And unfortunately, as fast as regulators can figure out how to set up situations to avoid predatory or just simply unsavory behavior or the wrong, not for whom it was intended. There's 10 more lawyers figuring out the loophole, how to get around it, and suing has become part of the business plan. Mm-hmm. With that said, I do also believe in an opportunity to have your voice heard. Some type of administrative hearing would have been appropriate. And so there also seems to be a potential quick reaction based on really terrible reporting. Now, about that reporting, I have experienced reporting in Missouri, and it is wildly inaccurate more than half the time. They did not seek sources in stories in the past that I have been involved with. So I have to take everything that happens in the Missouri press with a grain of salt at this point, because out of all the reporters that have written stories, I've only found one that was willing to do a fact check. They still didn't write the new facts. They were at least willing to hear it before they ignored it. And so there's layers when it comes to this issue, all the way up through how it's being reported and who is the beneficiary. So, but at the end of the day, due process should stand. And then once it's discovered nefarious behavior, get the fuck out.
I mean, Dale, in all your work in social equity, are you familiar with this type of, because they're saying, because how it sounds, at least how the article reads, it reads as though that they interviewed the main social equity applicants and asked them a series of questions. Have you witnessed any other municipalities in social equity that interview the applicants and like score them based on their knowledge of cannabis and the cannabis industry prior to issuing a license?
Yes, and there was a period of time where licensure was often merit-based, and that is when lawsuits really became part of the business plan, because the scoring, no matter how well done, no matter how blind, no matter how expert, can always be questioned, and that process is costly and expensive. Missouri's first 2 years, I believe, of revenues were spent on defending their program legally, not on the veterans and senior services that they had intended those monies to go towards. And lately, I have seen, honestly, none lately that are merit-based in that same way. However, they're still doing interviews and due diligence to ensure that the individual is in a certain income bracket, that they live where they said they lived, that they, whatever the qualifiers are for that particular social equity program, have been met.
Yeah, but I mean, I get that, but like this questionnaire interview style thing that at least I get the impression of when I read this, it sounds like they had like a Zoom meeting or something, and they asked them a series of questions on how cannabis works and who's responsible for this and responsible for that, and it sounds like because of their answers is why they're denying these licenses, and I haven't seen that happen in any other municipality that I can remember.
No, what's described right here, like I said, I would question the details. I don't want to say the validity, because I believe that there was something that happened, but is what is described in the paper what actually happened is what I'm questioning.
Interesting. So you don't think
I'm not familiar with what's happening.
So you don't think it was multiple choice that they gave them?
I think, knowing my experience with the government in Missouri, who I worked for under contract for a year, full disclosure, I worked for the Missouri Department of Health and Human Services, Health and Senior Services, and they were ridiculously careful about researching all the ways other programs have gone wrong and ensuring that any rubric that was set up for this type of activity was unbreachable. We had to undergo a multitude of challenges, and our process had to stand up to those challenges. It was rigorous, it was expensive, it was exhausting. I can't imagine that they would throw all that out and go do some dumb shit like this the way it's described in the press. And again, I'm just going to say, I've not found the press to be accurate in their reporting on these situations. So I would question the validity of how this went down. That said, due process is important for the companies who just lost their license. What that due process was, I think further investigation is warranted before I put out an opinion on that.
Sounds like a follow-up story.
Canna zoned. They had 2 of those licenses that were revoked. I know that we did report on those back in last December. They were predatory contracts, and they're the ones that were putting out Craigslist ads. Do you want to be a social equity business owner?
I think there was way more due diligence at hand than, hey, do you consider yourself social equity? Yes or no? No. Okay, you're out of here. I'm pretty sure there were a lot of lawyers, a lot of investigation, a lot of proof at hand that is exactly what they were if they were revoked in that sense.
Yeah, I think it's sad, like the rest of them, threw the baby out with the bathwater, and the rest of these folks got lumped in with that.
Yes.
It's damn Missouri. We were all talking all high.
Yeah, right. You're all on your high horse yesterday about Missouri, and now all of a sudden
still doing a lot else right. And again, I would investigate. If they were removing bad actors who misrepresented themselves in a specific licensing process, don't we want them to remove those licenses and do the right thing?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So that still may be the case, and time will tell, I guess. Time will tell.
And so will probably more lawsuits. So stay tuned.
Love covering some lawsuits. Yes. All right. Speaking of lawsuits, we're going to move it over to the medical side. We're going to roll right into Dr. Gene Talleyrand, get out of the legal world and hop into the medical world. He is the founder of the CESC, and at one point in time, he probably wrote your parents' recommendation. That's right. He's the founder of Medican as well, and it is none other than Dr. Gene Talleyrand.
Do we have applause today?
No. No applause.
You have applause?
No, sorry,
man.
Rico.
Come on.
I hear it in my head anyway.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about,
Happy
Dr.
Friday,
T.
everyone.
Yes.
Very smooth transition from legal to medical. I know nothing about legal, by the way, and don't want to. So happy Friday, everyone.
Well, Dr. T.
My headline today.
Dr. T, I think
yes.
I think you know where medical is legal, though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Medical is legal.
Yes. Yeah. Where medical is legal, like California medical is legal. Nevada medical is legal.
It's a pun.
Yeah.
That's illegal in my household. So the high rise of dependence, another pun, among medical cannabis users. That's the title to this article by Timon Cernak, MD, from Psychology Today. The brain recognizes the difference between medicinal and recreational cannabis. The difference has always been arbitrary. For example, after legalizing recreational cannabis, California initially required each cultivated seedling to be designated by growers as either a medicinal or recreational cannabis plant. From that point onward, each plant and its products maintained the designation all the way through retail sale. The process existed despite the fact that growers were free to designate any given seedling however they wished, depending on whatever they predicted the market would most need. Eventually, California relented to the fact that cannabis is cannabis. The same product sold for recreational users is sold to medicinal users. Today, the designation of whether a cannabis product is sold for one or the other purpose is made at the point of sale, with some taxes foregone when a customer qualifies as a medicinal user. The fact that the same strains of cannabis are sold for both recreational and medicinal purposes has raised the question of whether medicinal users meet the criteria for cannabis use disorder at the same time or at a different rate than the recreational users. So I need to point out that the medical criteria, the DSM-5 criteria for cannabis use disorder, are a series of vague, nonsensical, or conflicting statements that conflate healthy use with problematic behavior. So a meta-analysis study by Ling et al. Showed that among people who use recreational cannabis, 22% satisfy criteria for cannabis use disorder. In another meta-analysis, Dawson et al. Combined data from 14 studies with 3,681 participants from 5 different countries and found that 25% of medical cannabis users satisfy criteria for cannabis use disorder. Dawson concluded that the prevalence of cannabis use disorder is comparable in both recreational and medicinal users. So the diagnostic criteria for cannabis use disorder is a poor measure of problematic cannabis use. Tolerance and dependence are normal consequences of cannabis use and other legal substances. They are only problematic when the outcome is problematic. What I'm trying to say is that the author of this article is an idiot. He writes about cannabis without knowing much about it. But I chose this article because I agree that there's not much difference between recreational and medicinal use. Cannabis is not a vice. It doesn't cause damage like cigarettes or alcohol consumption. Regular cannabis use has recently been reported as improving quality of health in several studies. They say that daily walks are healthy. I walk every day. Does that make me a recreational walker or a medical walker? I propose we stop distinguishing between recreational and medical cannabis use. How about we agree that we are all using cannabis in health and wellness? This is Dr. Sean Talleyrand with Talleyrand News.
It's all medicine, and this is the wellness industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe it's all medical. No matter what use you're using it for, even if you don't understand the medical benefits, you are still receiving them. That's always been my opinion on this.
Yeah, well, now that we know that there's a series of receptors in our bodies that these compounds act on, all use is medicinal. And the other thing is that, fortifying the fatty tissues with things that are anti-inflammatory and antioxidant will help fight cancer and free radical formation that can lead to cancer and DNA damage. So, yeah, who is it? I think Ethan would say, even though we don't understand it, or in spite of us not understanding it, all cannabis use is medical, whether we understand it or not, because of the impact that it's having on our bodies, kind of like similar to the way vitamins work, right, Dr. Talleyrand? I mean, when you say that because there's an endogenous set of receptors that exist in our body, that these things are almost like vitamins in that these things are our bodies are hardwired to accept these molecules and to use them in productive ways.
If I could take that a step further, I think a lot of the common conditions that people suffer from is cannabis deficiency disorder in a way. You know, you're not getting your endogenous system is not producing, or they're not combining properly with your receptors. And when I look to, you know, a lot of these common conditions, or even when people say, well, it must be addictive because I feel crappy when I stop consuming cannabis, or I would correlate that with scurvy. We don't say you're addicted to vitamin C when you experience scurvy from a lack of vitamin C. We give you an orange. So there's, I think we can look at this from both sides of that pendulum as well.
I agree with that very, very much so, Dale, because there was a propagandist piece in the Hill this morning that Kevin Sabet was behind, and they were given. I thoroughly enjoyed it because they were getting on Vice President Kamala Harris and her little little circus show that she did the other day in regards with Fat Joe and whatnot. And so
you're supporting Kevin Sabet.
Hold on. You didn't allow me to finish. Okay. Because I do agree with Kevin Sabet in a lot of the points that he made as far as them grandstanding on this issue and not doing anything about it. But he conflated a lot of things, saying that cannabis was addictive and all of these other different things. And I was like, I don't buy that cannabis is addictive for a second. I'm not buying any of that BS or any of that type of rhetoric. That to me is just crazy talk.
Well, if you're addicted to feeling good and cannabis makes you feel good, I'm addicted to feeling good. So is there a real difference? I'm not addicted to cannabis, and I don't need cannabis necessarily to feel good, but cannabis certainly does it for me and gets me there. So if I'm addicted to feeling good, so be it, right?
I like what you did there. That's a good spin, Dr. Mark. But when we're talking about in the medical field, aren't addictive properties, don't they trigger something certain that happens in the brain that cannabis doesn't do?
It does. Yeah. So Dr. Talleyrand and I talked about this a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the dopamine and dopaminergic reward system. That is something that like things like cocaine acts on, and just feeling good, feeling natural bliss. But I guess, again, just going back to, I think something else that Dr. Talleyrand had mentioned, which is that what is the definition of accepted medical use, right? So when we talk about Schedule I listing of drug having no known use, they slip that, well, it has to be medically accepted, right? So that means, and Dr. Talleyrand illustrated this, it means that it's been taken through clinical trials and tested to prove efficacy and safety in humans. Now, it's true that both CBD and THC are the active ingredients of approved FDA-approved drugs. So to me, again, they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth, and this is what unwinds the whole Schedule I listing, because accepted medical use, right, Dr. Talleyrand, means that a doctor who is used to prescribing FDA-approved medications can feel good about prescribing cannabis. Isn't that right?
Well, I mean,
You're muted. No, you're good.
Recommending and not. Oh, I'm good. Okay. Yeah, we say recommended and not prescribed because the FDA owns the word medicine. They have the power over us advertising medicine. So, THC is medicine, CBD is medicine, a 1-to-1. THC to CBD is medicine, although not approved here. But cannabis is not medicine, according to the FDA, which is why I'm saying let's pivot. We need to look back at how we're doing this, and we need to, number one, admit that there is that, recreational is medicine. The only reason people wanted recreational recreational is they didn't want to go to the doctor to prove that they could use cannabis, which is fine with me. Let them buy it over the counter, but let's not change the reason why they're using it. It's for health and wellness. And recreation is a therapeutic act. So recreation is medicinal anyway. But I think we need to look at ourselves and how we present this to the rest of the community, to the rest of the non-cannabis users.
Well, I like the comment that Nick Bradley threw up there, and I think this kind of explains more kind of how I view it, how I view it at least. It says basically if it doesn't create a chemical dependency, and to me that's where I kind of like draw the line as far as a threshold on whether or not something is addictive or not.
Well, let me set the record straight for Nick and you. It does create a chemical dependency. It's okay. It doesn't hurt you. That's really the end result is, does it hurt you? It does create a chemical dependency. There is tolerance with cannabis. You are hitting your dopamine reward system with THC. You're counteracting your dopamine reward system with CBD. But so what, right? That doesn't mean it's bad. You know, there's no bad outcome from doing that. The dopamine reward system is there for a reason. And it's there to get you to do things that are beneficial.
Does chocolate also hit that same? Doesn't like, yeah. I mean, it's.
I don't know. Probably.
Well,
sugar is my point. You know, it's a drug.
Yeah, sugar, caffeine. Dr. T would hit that also, that marker.
Sugar has claimed millions more lives than cannabis.
That part.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And
cannabis is not bad. That's the real world evidence.
And on
I really appreciated, real quick, I appreciate how you said that recreation is, it's good for your health. I need to take that. I need to take that medicine a little bit more often for how much I work. What's hard for me, and my ears were exploding, is as an industry, when we call it recreational, we make it sound fun for kids. And so there's also just a messaging issue with recreational versus adult use and responsible use. So I just had to slide that in there as Amsterdam University.
And Dale, I just want to...
Is using adults good for your health? Is using adults good for your health?
Using adults? I'd be careful with that. But just responsible use, adult use. But I really like the way that you're approaching that, and I'm going to adopt some of that verbiage. Thank you, doctor.
I love that. You know, Dr. T just gave you a red pill. And on that, we're going to go to a commercial, and we're going to be right back.
Purple. Mix them together, baby.
The Control Tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The Control Tower from Highly Educated. All right, stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you hit that like button. I know we'll appreciate it. You'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can find directly on our website at www.highat9news.com. I'm Jason Beck, and this is Smoky Vanilla. And if you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to get yourself a stretch and smoke with Smoky Vanilla.
That's right, baby. I'm Smoky Vanilla with my background in kinesiology. I'm a sports massage therapist and stretch coach. I focus mostly on athletes who have chronic pain or injury due to their sport, or the legends of the chronic in the game, baby.
Oh, yeah, you know what it is. We just stretched, and now we're gonna smoke, because you know what it is.
That's right. I love intuitively creating a session based on the individual I'm working with. We'll go through a few assessments, look at the past health history, injury, or anything that's still affecting you today, and create a customized session just for you. Let's go. Woo!
All right, y'all, get your notebooks ready. Because up next, we've got a New England-based anti-boof peddler of truth who is also an organic chemistry and plant oil extraction expert. Here to break us off with a little bit of Friday science, Y'all know who it is. Dr. Mark Scialdone. Hold up, because Jason don't have it.
What?
Here we go.
Oh, you.
I'll plug myself.
We don't hear it. We don't hear it, Rico. But we're all clapping. We don't hear it.
You don't hear it?
No.
Happy Good Friday, everybody. Hope it's a great Friday. And happy Easter weekend for all those who celebrate, right? It's 3 days after Good Friday. I guess Passover's at the end of the month, so I don't think we have to wish everyone a happy Passover till about a month from now. So anyway, my story comes from the MJ Biz Daily, and it's entitled "Minnesota Lawmakers Are Mulling Over THC Beverages on Tap and Marijuana License Cap." Oh, those both rhyme.
It's a rapper now.
So, Minnesota operators could sell low THC beverages on tap if changes this week made to the state's 2023 adult use marijuana law are finalized. Though Native American tribes in Minnesota started selling recreational products in August, the state's full adult use market isn't expected to open until early 2025 as lawmakers continue to debate edits to the legislation. Among the tweaks approved by the House Finance Committee and Policy Committee earlier this week on Wednesday is the allowing of popular low THC beverages derived from hemp to be sold on tap. How cool is that, right? You're going to go to a watering hole and someone's going to open up a tap and give you your cannabis beverage. I think that's kind of cool. I think it's definitely progressive. I don't know of any other state that's moving towards that because they're already selling low THC stuff at liquor stores, and I guess they'll be able to sell now kegs. So a keg of some cannabis beverage that you can come in and have a keg party with. Isn't that cool? I think that's cool. Awarding social license or social equity licenses via a vetted lottery. Well, let's see how smooth that goes, Rico? Rather than a merit-based system, right? So a vetted lottery versus a merit-based system. Oh boy, that's going to be crookeder than a dog's hind leg, right? Despite criticism from social equity advocates that the large out-of-state retailers could basically game the system, right? And there are a lot of out-of-state folks coming into Minnesota just because the laws are so progressive. So the other points is that they want to allow medical marijuana patients to grow up to 16 plants. Woohoo! 16 plants, pretty sizable garden, right, per adult. For the first, and up to 8 allowed under the adult use regulations. So I guess, that's pretty significant, at least. I think that's significant. Regulators are also asking lawmakers to impose a license cap for the first 2 years recreational sales. So I guess unlike a THC cap, they just want to cap the number of licenses so the people who have gotten in and who've made investments can basically start to get a return on that investment. So Charlene Briner, the state's Office of Cannabis Management's interim director, is requesting a limit of no more than 200 retail licenses, 50 cultivation permits, 24 manufacturing licenses, and 44 meso businesses, whatever those are, which permits small-scale cultivation as well as manufacturing and scale. So I don't know what a meso business is, but I guess we'll find out. So half of those licenses would be reserved for social equity applicants. Cultivation canopies for meso businesses would be capped at 15,000 square feet. Maybe that's what sort of differentiates the meso business from the other 50 cultivation permits. So there's going to be 44 of those meso businesses and 50 of the cultivation permits with 24 manufacturing licenses. There would be no limit on micro business license, which I didn't mention above, but which are similar to meso businesses permits, except for a 5,000 square foot cap on cultivation. So I guess they have even a lower level. So it's like meso businesses at 15,000, micro businesses at 5,000. I wonder if they're going to have a nano business category here coming up. Probably not. So micro businesses are also permitted on-site consumption and live entertainment. How cool is that, right? The full legislature must sign off on the committee's changes before becoming law. Well, if you actually go to the comments that they made on the Gov site, on the mngov.site, what you'll see is that, yeah, there's other notable provisions. Not all of these are good. Let me know what you think. Dale, I'd be really interested just in your opinion on some of these. So allow THC beverages to be sold on tap. Okay, we've already talked about that. Make changes in testing procedures to measure THC level in employees. What? That seems like a couple steps back from a progressive, legislation like this. Establish a new approval process for cannabinoids to be designated as non-intoxicating. Well, I guess for for CBG and CBN and those. So this is what I was speaking before. I think what they're thinking about is how to merge these markets together, and maybe save the intoxicating stuff for the cannabis licenses, but let the hemp players play in this non-intoxicating space. So remove all background checks, which sounds great. So they're kind of like loosening things up. Prohibit the sale of lower potency hemp edibles to an obviously intoxicated person. Well, how does the internet know who's obviously intoxicated? Or are they going to train dispensary and liquor store employees to identify somebody who's already intoxicated on cannabis and not let them buy cannabis beverages? That seems a little weird to me. Let's see. Oh, this is another thing that seems weird. Permit products having hemp or having only hemp-derived cannabinoids to be sent out of state for testing? What? Why are they sending their hemp things out of state? That seems stupid. That seems like, what, are they trying to discourage making hemp things? Well, when you have beverages that basically qualify as hemp, because you could put 10 milligrams in a 12-ounce beverage and still get loaded on it if it's in the nano-emulsified form, still seems to be like that can still be derived from hemp. So why would they make those people send stuff out of state to be tested? Doesn't make any sense, right? This is very interesting. I've never heard of this before. Maybe you guys have heard of this. Prohibit selling empty cannabis packaging that looks like an existing brand. So I know there's a lot of that on the internet. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but you could buy knockoff cookies packaging and knockoff packaging of other more popular brands. And so they're specifically prohibiting that. So I haven't heard about that before. And just this last bullet point is specify how the medical cannabis program would be transferred to the Office of Cannabis Program Management, giving the office authority and access to data and to facilitate that transfer. Well, I think that has crashed and burned in several other states, right, Dr. T? It's not necessarily good to take the medical program as it is in a medical state and end it and just fold that into your adult use recreational, right, Dale? That's train wrecked, I know, in a couple other states. So there are some points in this legislation I think make a lot of sense, but other points that don't make any sense at all. But I'd be interested in what my other correspondents have to say. That's my story today on Great Friday from the shores of Lake Champlain here in Colchester, Vermont. I'd be interested in what you all have to say about this story. Dr. Mark here.
Yeah, Dr. Mark, there's a lot going on there. It sounds like they're trying to create a mini FDA in the state to identify cannabinoids, right? Which is the same thing Utah's did. Look, nature abhors a vacuum, and if the Fed won't do it, the states are trying. What's interesting is there may be some interesting science that comes from some of this. At the very least, we can point at it as something that the Fed might take up, or please don't do that. Look how bad it's failed. At least it's an example in the wild of what happens. I also hear, like, let's regulate cannabis like hemp, welling up inside me of the harder we keep making it for cannabis companies and the easier we keep making it for hemp companies. It's the same plant. The other concern that I have, though, look, intoxication is about behavior and action, not which substance got you there. It could just be you're too damn tired and you are more of a danger on the road than somebody with 8 illegal substances in their system. Texting is more dangerous than any of these things in your system. So we're talking about behavior while you're on the road. I also want to point out that when you ingest cannabinoids, that the saliva tests, the blood tests barely bump. It barely registers. And yet you are the most, quote, intoxicated under edibles for the longest amount of time. When you inhale, it is a short, fast duration, and then it's over about 20 minutes later. You have a huge spike on the saliva and blood test, and then it's gone. Well, it's still there. I'm talking about the active metabolites, but that spike doesn't happen with edibles. So just throw the tests out. This is not like blood alcohol content tests. Those are scientifically proven. These are not. And so this really does boil down to drug recognition experts. I would rather see an iPad that you have to do certain things so fast on the iPad than a saliva swab. I think we would get way more terrible drivers off the road that are also on Ambien and whatever else is legal, but you still shouldn't be driving on it. The last thing that I want to point out, I am a mother of 3. I drive on these roads. What I don't want to see is alcohol combined with, I think offering non-alcoholic beverages at a bar is awesome. Having a safer alternative, we've already seen that having a safer alternative in legal state has reduced drunk driving deaths. Mm-hmm. You combine them, and there is a synergistic effect where you have half a glass of wine, and then you switch over to that non-alcoholic beverage, and you are behaving like a dangerous, stumbling drunk. You fall down, you hit your head, is the best thing that can happen. The worst is you get behind the wheel of your car and plow into a family of 5. And that has happened. Yes. And that's what I'm worried about, is they're not considering the true concerns about cannabis because they're so busy focusing on the stupid shit that doesn't kill people.
Dale, you know why I think things have really taken off in Minnesota from my reading? And there's actually a story I just put in the Discord, Jason. If you could put that up to the chat, that would be great. The Minnesota brewers are all behind this because they've needed something to differentiate themselves after COVID. And what they believe is that these THC beverages has saved their industry. So let me just read this for a second. The Minnesota Brewers Conference on March 22nd in Minneapolis was abuzz with stories on how hemp-infused beverages help breweries survive the gauntlet of the craft beverage market.
Dr. Mark, I apologize. Can you repeat that for Jason one more time? Because Jason needs to hear that.
Say that again.
These brewers in Minnesota are behind this, and that's how they got the legislation put through, and that's how they're able to carry these hemp-infused beverages at liquor stores, and now they're going to serve them at bars, and they're going to have kegs that you can take home and have a keg party with a cannabis beverage. I mean, this is, like Dale said, you know, someone could drive home from a bar and kill somebody after they've been drinking tequila all night, or they could drive home from a bar and stop at the fast food place to get something to eat after drinking some cannabis beverages. Which would you rather have on the road? You know, it's known that alcohol leads to intoxication that completely incapacitates you from being able to operate a car, which is the most dangerous thing that we all do every day, right? The most dangerous thing we all do every day, no matter what you do, right? You driving a car is the most dangerous thing we do. So if you think about it, right? I mean, if cannabis led to, you know, driving impairment, we'd be dead by now, right?
It leads to people driving slower with both hands on the wheel in the lane.
Yeah, that is true. Studies have shown that people that consume cannabis and drive, they're more likely to stop at a stop sign longer, or, you know, drive slower, as opposed to alcohol, where it makes you go faster and
just stop at the stop sign and don't go forward.
What stop sign?
You know,
I think what this shows, I mean, Jason, I know you're not a big fan of the beverage sector.
I'm not.
And certainly
he's a denier. He is
I'm not a denier.
That it saved the microbrewery industry in Minnesota. When we read that story,
I'm ecstatic for them. I'm ecstatic for them. Okay, I'm ecstatic. There's lots of Americans.
Are you admitting it?
No, I'm not. I'm not admitting that. No, I'm just saying that I'm excited that all those people still have their jobs. They're still able to provide for their families. I think that's a great thing. But do I think that the beverage industry is going to take off like all these speculators out there speculate? No, not a chance in hell. Not on its best day.
I don't know, Jason. This buds for you. They're all set to go, man. Think about it.
Yeah, that's cute.
You know, here's the thing I would say, Jason.
Too bad no one drinks Bud Light anymore.
I agree with you on some level that I like consuming cannabis, and I like just my drink to just be a regular drink, like iced tea or water. I don't need cannabis in my drink.
Exactly.
If I have good, tasty nugget and I got good, tasty concentrates, I don't need a cannabis beverage. But if you're in a market where that is restricted, and how you can get your cannabis buzz is by drinking a seltzer, look, I'm fine with that because
the trap is just going to continue to thrive, Dr. Mark. The trap. If they live in a market, if they live in a place that they can't access, they're not going to be like, well, since we can't have a smoke today, let's go have a drink. That's not reality.
Let's say you don't drink at all, but you're going to the bar and you have a bunch of friends that go to the bar. You can go have a low THC beer or beverage that is on tap at the bar. You can still smoke.
But you could, but most of those people are like tyrants about their sobriety in the sense to where they're going to view that cannabis beverage.
You're generalizing. There's no data behind that.
That's an average.
And as the designated driver for life for most of my life, I'm
not talking about designated drivers.
Why not? We would like a tasty beverage too.
Because how Rico is putting it, he's making it sound like the people that would be consuming this would be people that were former alcoholics. That's how he's framing it.
I didn't say that.
That's how it came across.
Would choose alcohol if it weren't prohibited to choose cannabis. The reason alcohol took off is because it was the legal alternative. And so folks are just now discovering that there are beverages that make them feel more social, that make them feel good, that are not alcohol based. And it's going to take years for people to recognize that. And actually, my story is going to touch on why some people will never be that person. They're never going to like the experience that they have with cannabis because of their DNA.
Ooh. And you know, I'm just saying, man, like plenty of people don't drink. And less people are drinking like every year. And you can go enjoy the game at the bar with your friends who do drink and not feel like you're left out. That's all I'm saying, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
It's an option. Well, it's another option. And shout out to Minnesota on this bill. Like I agree with Dr. Mark that other the crazy draconian bullshit they put in there too. But shout out for Minnesota for actually following the data, because they are a beer drinking state, and their microbrewery industry was on a lifeline. It was on the ropes, man. It was about to be done, and these Republicans who accidentally pushed forward the bill allowing them to have low THC edibles and drinks saved an industry. And there were these microbreweries and these microbrewers that actually converted everything to low THC drinks, and they made millions off of that. So big shout out to Minnesota on that.
Yeah,
I just can't.
Hops is the cousin to cannabis. For those of you that don't know,
that's true. And you know, the one thing though, I'm gonna crack up about, okay, is because you know something's gonna happen, and then they're gonna start creating some new legislation, and then all of a sudden, all the bars everywhere are gonna be forced to have these little markers on the side of them that's like your little 2 milligram marker, your 5 milligram marker on all of the beverages that they serve any cannabis in. That's going to end up happening, and all of those bars are going to end up having to comply.
Okay.
Do they do that with ethanol? That's an alcohol? Like, do you have to measure your martini?
Well, I'm
to know how much
just
ethanol
saying
you're drinking?
how all beverages are currently served, Dr. Mark, is that they have to have that ratio in the container, and if it's a stronger one, then it has to have the lines as to where that potency is basically.
Yeah. So Jason, so just real quick. So a couple of years ago, most cannabis beverages not only tasted like shit, but they all lost potency on the shelf. So you ever try cleaning your bong out with water? Right, doesn't work too well. Right, cannabinoids.
It depends on how dirty.
soluble.
It depends on how dirty your bong is, Dr. Mark.
So they have to be emulsified. And can you make a stable cannabinoid emulsion? Yeah. Making one that tastes good, that's the key. And the companies that basically have developed that technology has had a couple years now to get their act together, and that's why beverages today actually taste a whole lot better than they tasted just a handful of years ago. And the other thing I can tell you is that they're not losing potency to the side of the can. Now, it really depends on what the milligram dose is, but again, most of those low ones, like around 5 or 10 milligrams, those test pretty good. So, and they're stable, and they taste good, and they get you loaded. End of story. You don't need really a 100 milligram beverage.
I'm just telling you,
even if they put some regulation out there like that, Jason, you know what? Like, who cares?
I'm just saying, I'm gonna find it funny. I'm gonna find it.
It's a good thing.
I'm gonna be amused by it.
The manufacturers of those labels are gonna make more money too. So
those aren't gonna be labels. Those can be the manufacturers of the glassware.
Okay, they'll make money. Why are you mad? Why are you hating on this, man?
I'm not hating. I just think I'm just finding humor in it, bro. I'm just finding humor in it. And I'm going to continue.
The investment required for a canning line is significant. It's huge. That's why beverages do make a play towards big beverage, because they've already sunk that cost into the canning lines. They already know how to make beverages. Adding a THC SKU on their production floor isn't going to be a big thing. So yeah, big beverage is very interested in this.
And while we're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back.
You mad?
Get ready for the return of the shit show to Los Angeles, returning Friday, May 3rd, 7 p.m. to midnight at a brand new venue. Comedy sets by comedians such as Demi York, Lindsay Ames, Alyssa Phillips, Chris Thayer, Josh Shakespeare, Fumi Avi, Jay Snow, Brent Weinbach, Chris Kelly, and hosted by none other than Abdullah Saeed. So head over to www.cloudmedia.partners now to get your tickets, and we'll see you there.
Some of that of the shit show, does that get us demonetized just running that ad?
You're funny. I don't think so. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. That's cute though, Rico. Very cute. But coming up next, she's a mom. She's keeping up with the Joneses, and she's the chancellor of Oaksterdam University and is going to be in LA tomorrow and is up for award at the Women's Canna Awards. So if you haven't voted already, make sure you get your votes in. That's right. It is none other than Miss Dale Sky Jones.
Mrs. Jones.
Oh, we heard it that time, Rico. Whatever you did, you fixed it.
That's some serious applause. Thank you. And happy end of Women's Month. We are going out with a big bang with the Women's Canna Awards tomorrow. So yes, hopefully you will be in beautiful Los Angeles for that. And my story today is about THC metabolism and how your metabolism could influence cannabis use disorder risks, or just if you like it or not. So my story comes out of Neuroscience News, and researchers have linked differences in THC metabolism to varying effects of cannabis use and the risk of developing cannabis use disorder, which I'll call CUD. The study, which included young adults, both with and without CUD, found that genetic differences in the THC metabolizing enzymes can lead to stronger and longer lasting effects of cannabis, especially among females who metabolize THC more slowly. Now, this connection between THC metabolism and CUD risk, particularly observed in a younger demographic, underscores the importance of understanding individual physiological responses to cannabis. The findings also suggest potential for targeted interventions and the need for educational programs to inform teens and young adults about their unique risks regarding cannabis use. So there's a few key facts that came out of the findings. First, sex-specific effects. Females with slower THC metabolism are at a higher risk for CUD, while males with similar genetic variations report more negative initial effects of cannabis use. There are genetic influences. About 25% of people have a genetic variant that results in slower THC metabolism. This impacts the intensity and duration of cannabis effects. And third, the educational importance. The study highlights the need for educational programs that address individual differences in cannabis experience and the risks of CUD, particularly among adolescents. Now, I've had a lot of folks come through Oaksterdam and say, you know, I'm doing this for somebody that I love, not for myself. I don't actually like the way cannabis makes me feel. I say, well, we're not going to push it on you. You don't have to consume it yourself in order to understand it. The other question that I would always ask them is, hey, was that first time you tried cannabis when you were drinking? Because oftentimes it's when you're drinking that you've, you know, lowered your resistance, you're willing to try new things. But oftentimes that combination of alcohol and cannabis results in deleterious effects, vomiting, dizziness, paranoia. Just that did not make me feel good. No, thank you. And maybe try it again without the alcohol and also the method of ingestion and the type. So this just is fascinating for me personally that, and of course, it's genetic. It's based on metabolism. So these findings were recently published in Addictive Behaviors by the Medical University of South Carolina researcher Rachel Tomko, she's a PhD, and former psychology intern Crystal Davis, PhD. They're both postdoctoral fellows at the University of Pennsylvania. I would encourage folks to read this because CUD is currently affecting approximately 1 in 5 people who use cannabis. So we're talking about 20% of the population that this leads to problems. Now, this is where I get a little curious because they call it withdrawal symptoms and cravings when not using cannabis, difficulty reducing cannabis use, and a need to consume more of the drug to experience the same effects. Do you mean homeostasis? Is this just feeling good because you're healthy and you're not experiencing a deficiency in cannabis or cannabinoids because your body endogenously is producing enough and they are combining properly with your receptors? This is where I start to question the science. We are just beginning to understand, the study goes on to say, some of the effects of how people metabolize and process cannabis. For this study, the researchers recruited 38 young adults, 18 to 25, that said they do have or have been diagnosed with CUD, and 16 with a non-CUD substance use disorder, meaning I'm addicted to something, but it's not cannabis, people. The age group was chosen as they are 3 times more likely in this age group to have CUD than either teens or adults over 26 who use cannabis. This age group was important to study because the brain is still developing and blood samples were collected from the study participants. So I just want to note again, normal people who regularly consume cannabis were not part of this study. Only people that had some type of use dependency disorder, and they compared cannabis use disorder to some other dependence disorder. I think what we can take away from this study is the differences in sex that are evident in the data, that this definitely affects more women than men, that they realized very quickly there were sex-specific effects going on that cannot be ignored. And so if nothing else, to understand that young females may metabolize cannabis more slowly, maybe at a higher risk, and why, I think this, I'm hoping that this will really encourage more studies along these lines and with a much larger base of individuals. Unfortunately, we often only study individuals that present with a problem and then, blanket that out, extrapolate that out for all of society. They never compare the folks that are just fine and what those ramifications were for them. So as we close out Women's Month, I just want to encourage everyone out there, please support those business people of the female persuasion by putting your purchasing dollars where your heart is and give support, not just lip service. I am Dale Sky Jones, coming at you straight out of Oaksterdam.
This is some real interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about the subjects that they recruited, they had to have been diagnosed with cannabis use disorder, right? Is that what you said?
That is how I read it, is they had been diagnosed with either CUD or another disorder. Yep.
So let's ask Dr. Talleyrand. So Dr. Talleyrand, assessing cannabis use disorder in patients, what does that mean? So these patients that were enrolled here all had a doctor said, yeah, you smoke too much weed, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah. It's a sham diagnosis, which makes this study problematic. Bad data in is bad data out. Cannabis use disorder is a sham diagnosis. It really, even in studies, they can just say, you're using cannabis, you have cannabis use disorder, even though there's no problem. And the idea is to identify the problem, not the fact that you're using cannabis and gaining normal tolerance, normal withdrawal symptoms without a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they did study normal people without a problem and compare them. After all, it's the people that got caught, right? And this, I will underline what you just said, Dr. Talleyrand, because, for instance, in Florida, part of the scam, the current senator, former governor, his family and his wife's family between them own more than half of the drug testing facilities and the drug treatment facilities. And so you get busted, you're not a medical patient, you're required now to go to a treatment facility, your head takes that bed instead of somebody with opiate use disorder or somebody that really truly needs this help, and then the state just pays the facility for all their time and trouble of treating this horrible disease of cannabis use disorder.
And those guys are cashing in on that.
And keeping it illegal for adults in the process.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And pushing back. They're pushing back. This is their way to find cannabis problematic. It's historically, cannabis has not been problematic. The only thing that's been problematic are those who are governing other people and want to find problems with cannabis users, because cannabis users tend not to listen. They tend to be rebellious. They tend to be introspective. They're just not going to join the crowd. And so this is not good when you want to get everyone to fight a war or what have you. Listen to your doctor.
There's one other issue, if you follow the money, Dr. T, that cannabis consumers and businesses tend to do well and have nice things like cash and property. And when you look at like a meth dealer, they actually have to pay to raise the property. They have to go tear down the property and dispose of everything, where in cannabis, they can take the money and it's often split between local and federal law enforcement. This is why property forfeiture is a thing. And this is also why we are keeping it clearly illegal, because property forfeiture is how many of the enforcement agencies pay for their nice things.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. Very, very, very
Hey, Dr.
true.
T, if bad data is bada, does that make bad data beta?
Okay.
That's a pun. I'm not going to answer that.
But let me just say, earlier, y'all were talking about meso, and of course I Googled it. It's the setting between macro and micro, from ancient Greek, mesos, meaning middle. You're welcome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Thank you.
So
We're next going to have quantum licenses.
I have a serious question for you guys. Serious question. So we all know that hemp and cannabis are the same thing, right? It's all the same. It's all the same plant. So my question is, does cannabis hypermesis syndrome also affect people that would consume hemp-derived products?
Probably not. What you're saying is Delta 8 products, where they are.
I'm just.
You can't.
Well, this is kind of more where I'm really really.
Can people with CHS use hemp products? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because
what I'm imagining is this ultimate scenario out in the great state of Milwaukee, you guys. since a side effect of CHS is puking, vomiting, throwing up, I can just imagine all these people going into the bar for the first time, trying to go and have a cannabis beverage, and then finding out that they have CHS and they just start puking. But and they're not going to be able to figure out if they're drunk or high.
Realistically, though, cannabis use disorder, we're seeing in young males who are dabbing all day, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm nauseous, so I should use cannabis because cannabis helps nausea," and then they start vomiting. The cure for cannabis hyperemesis disorder is stop consuming cannabis for less than a week, and your body will reset, and stop smoking. So you're wasting it.
Does that work for everyone? That doesn't work for everyone, though.
Yes, really, so the fundamental essence of your question is, does the dose of THC, is that responsible for CHS, right? Because in hemp-derived products, things are going to be much lower in dose. Mm-hmm. And I would defer to Dr. T, but I would tend to think that lower dose of THC is not likely to induce an episode for cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, but I don't have any clinical experience or data to draw that on, but perhaps Dr. T, is it directly correlated to dose of THC?
No, it's associated. So first of all, whenever there's a syndrome at the end of a diagnosis, it's a collection of symptoms. We don't really know why they're all connected. CHS tends to be from people who use high doses. They wouldn't throw up at the bar. They usually throw up the next morning. So almost like a withdrawal effect from cannabis.
Interesting.
Often they go and use THC to stop the vomiting, which it does. As some people have tried to use CBD along with THC, but anecdotally, I haven't heard that has worked. It's a molecularly interesting idea, but I haven't seen it happen in the real world so much.
Well, what we do know from clinical work that Professor Meshulam and others had carried out is that THC at very low dose, psychoactive dose, completely blocks all chemotherapy-induced nausea in cancer patients, completely blocks it. And Dr. T, I think you'll agree with me, there's many things in the body and many things in biology that have what are called a biphasic response. And it really depends on the dose of the medicine, a dose of the active ingredient, on whether or not you're going to get controlling of nausea, or could it actually do just the opposite at a much higher dose because you completely overwhelm the receptors or the body's ability to deal with such a high concentration at such a high dose. So certain things, again, at a much lower dose, not going to see cannabis hyperemesis. So what I would, again, hypothesize based on that, Jason, to answer your question, is that low dose beverages, you probably won't see a cannabis hyperemesis type episode happening. But again, that's just a hypothesis. But I would, again, go back to the literature and see if they've actually looked at THC dose being primarily the thing that's, going to switch that biphasic response from something that would control nausea at very lower dose to something that would actually induce it.
Interesting. Very, very.
Testimonial here. I have cyclic vomiting syndrome. Cannabis helps me most of the time until it doesn't. And there are more than once where I go take a higher dose, and that is what triggers uncontrollable vomiting. If I go take a dab, I can't stop throwing up after that dab. But if I just smoke a joint, it helps my nausea. So finding that balance, I don't believe that I have cannabis hyperemesis. I have cyclic vomiting syndrome, a collection of symptoms where I get triggered and then can't stop throwing up. So it's fascinating to me to hear about this, and anyone looking to do clinical research, I'm right here.
So you're not a CHS
Do you go to
denier.
CVS? Do you go to CVS to treat your CVS?
CVS does not have medicine that helps my CVS. I can't keep water down. I throw it back up again.
So you're not a CHS.
I can't vomit smoke though, and that's why vaporizing is a treatment for me.
Interesting. So you're not a CHS denier then? Okay.
Keep going.
Don't take the bait. Do not take the bait. Jason's been trying. Jason, I've kept my mouth shut this whole damn time. Nobody take the bait. I see exactly what Jason's doing right now. He's trying to stir some shit up. We're not touching that.
Always. All right. Well, this last story today, you guys, I'm just going to read just a couple of paragraphs. It's a long story. If you want to read the whole thing, you can head over to our website at www.highat9news.com. But Kansas State Committee tables medical marijuana bill until 2025 legislation, you guys. Pro-medical marijuana activists and law enforcement officials opposed 2 different reasons on Thursday's legislation introduced in the Kansas Senate to authorize a 5-year pilot program for production, processing, and distribution of cannabis for medical purposes through pharmacies. Hemp industry participants, physicians, and retired U.S. Marine Corps officer urged the Senate Federal and State Affairs Committee to bring Kansas into the conversation about the potential of a heavily regulated system of providing consumers with medical marijuana. The Kansas House passed a broader, highly regulated medical marijuana bill back in 2021, but the Kansas Senate didn't vote on that measure, and movement on the issue came to a standstill. 24 U.S. That's pretty much it, you guys. They're not doing anything until next year in regards to this. This thing is dead in the water for now, and people in Kansas are going to be suffering. And if you want to read more that whole article, you can go to www.highat9news.com. What do you guys say?
The people on the Missouri side of Kansas City can still get it.
Well, I mean, the other people on the other side of Kansas, they just go to Colorado.
Just go, yeah, man. You just go a couple blocks over, and yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yes, it's a sad day for Kansans and a sad day for Virginians, but it's still a great Friday. Thank you all for joining us for yet another episode and another week of High at 9 News. You can always catch us live weekdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our super fans showing love, getting their comments posted live on the big screen, our live audience and online supporters catching us across all media platforms, tuning in each day to the headlines of chaos, also known as the developing cannabis industry. To our vetted correspondents tuning in from all over, bringing us much needed variety of perspective and your respected opinions to the table. To our production team, Cloud Media Partners, all of our sponsors keeping the lights on and our AV struggles to a minimum. As always, Cannabis Sativa L, the reason we and the whole team reads these stories every single day. Thank you too. And it has been Friday, March 29th, 2024. The show is over. You've all been blessed with the top industry headlines. Hope it was enough to put in your pipe and smoke at least until Monday. My name is Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High 9 News, cannabis industry's #1 daily news show. Make sure you guys show love to all the women in your lives. Make sure you guys show love to women in the industry at the WCAs tomorrow. And in lieu of that, I want to give it to Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones.
Thank you.
Dale Jones, you can take us out today.
Dad on the street, and we couldn't do it without all of our allies. So yes, shout out to all of those of the female persuasion. And one last request, again, put your money where your mouth is and show your support. Don't just talk about it. Go ask for women-owned products. Ask for those women of color. Ask for women veterans products. Ask for indigenous women's products. If they don't have them, ask why not and walk out the door and go ask the next place. It's not just lip service. Give your women what they need, which is autonomy and good business. So coming at you from straight out of Oaksterdam, I'm on my way to New Haven, Connecticut and Trenton, New Jersey in service of social equity programs. I am Dale Sky Jones coming at you for High at 9 News. Thank you.